Thanks.
Should I shut the door?
Thank you, though.
Okay. Good morning again. We are the judges for Unit 2, correct? Unit 2? All right, we'll introduce ourselves. You can introduce yourselves and we'll get started. My name is Zalalam Bogala. I'm an attorney and an educator. I've been a part of Unit 2 for a long time, as you heard about an hour ago. Happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Rachel Tatro. I am an owner and partner in the firm of Blueprint Collaborative. We're up in Reno, and we do nonprofit capacity building services. So we work with nonprofits. And my background, I have a background in politics and in marketing communications, and we're happy to be here with you.
Morning, I'm Leah Chan Greenwald. I'm the Dean of the William S. Boyd School of Law here at UNLV. And I'm also a board member, along with Rachel, of the MVCCE, and we're very excited to be here this morning, and congratulations on making it to state.
Thank you.
The important part, yes.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Good morning, I'm Daisy Ruiz and I'm happy to be here.
I'm Alexander Banker,
I'm Natalie Apley.
and we are Unit 2 from Reed High School.
All right, Edward C. Reed High School from Sparks, Nevada. All right. Unit 2, how did the framers create the Constitution? Seeking to rebut the fears of the anti-federalists, one Federalist rhetorically asked, will a virtuous and sensible people choose villains or fools for their officers? To what extent, if any, has Fabius's confidence in the American people prevailed throughout American history? Which constitutional design elements are intended to prevent the election of an unqualified or harmful executive, as described by Fabius? How effective have these elements been in practice? Should we consider additional constitutional amendments to address potential issues with executive power? Why or why not? You may begin when you're ready.
The words of John Dickinson, writing as Fabius, have generally prevailed throughout American history. The extreme labels of villains and fools are common through history, but are used to describe leaders representing an opposing viewpoint, one that we distrust and fear. Alexander Hamilton expressed this sentiment in Federalist Papers 65 and 66, describing how impeachments will tend to be political. The real test of the words villains or fools should be the supermajorities the framers required for removal from office.
Article 1, Section 5, Clause 2 requires 2/3 of members of the House and the Senate to remove one from their group. Aside from the 17 members removed for supporting the Confederate rebellion, only 4 members of Congress have been removed in the entire history for foolish or villainous behavior, including George Santos in 2023 for fraud and misuse of campaign funds.
Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6 requires 2/3 of the Senate to convict and remove a person from office who has been impeached by the House. These supermajority requirements aim to ensure, in a sense, that the term villains and fools is not an emotional, competitive, or political label, but rather is based on a broad consensus of the misuse or abuse of power.
Only 3 of 47 presidents have been impeached on party line votes, and none of them removed from office by 2/3 vote in the Senate.
An element of the Constitution aimed at preventing an election of an unqualified or harmful executive is the Electoral College in Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2. This clause left it to state legislatures to determine how state electors would be appointed.
Harvard law professor Einar Elhuge argued that since political parties are widely disdained at the time, this process was designed to pick not the candidate from the most popular political faction, but the wisest and most virtuous leader.
In Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2, the Senate must give consent to executive nominations. Legal scholar John McGuinness wrote that framers located the process of advice and consent of the Senate as a check to prevent president from appointing people who have unsound principles or blemished characteristics. The Electoral College and advice and consent clauses have been effective enough to avoid despotism, repeated injury, and tyranny that inspired the Declaration of Independence.
We should consider the following amendments to address potential issues with executive power. Congressman Steve Cohen introduced an amendment that would explicitly prohibit a presidential self-pardon, pardons of family members, administration officials, and campaign employees. And we would add a preemptive pardon as seen in President Biden's last day in office. The pardon power is supposed to be a safety valve to protect against injustice, not a tool for the president to put himself and his inner circle above the law.
Another amendment we would consider for the same reason was introduced by Congressman Joseph Morrell of New York. The No One is Above the Law amendment would in effect overturn Trump v. U.S. and eliminate all immunity for crimes a former president committed while in office.
Finally, because the increasing degree of policymaking by executive order, we should consider an amendment that would constitutionalize the firm ground standard set in Youngstown v. Sawyer. Any executive order with force of law shall not exceed the authority granted by Congress or the Constitution. Without these amendments, we can still rely on the elections, the First Amendment, federalism, and checks and balances, especially judicial review, to address issues with the executive power.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for that. I want to know, how closely has the Electoral College aligned with its original purpose?
In modern days now, the Electoral College is kind of far from what it usually was, because before the Electoral College was selected from electors that were appointed from our state legislators, but since now the 17th Amendment that overturned that senators and House Representatives are elected by the people, it's now the senators and House Representatives that elect our president and Electoral College.
Sure.
So we talked a little bit about, you spoke a little bit about virtue and being virtuous. Do you think it's essential for a president to possess virtue? Why or why not?
Yes, it is essential for a president to have a virtue because this means that he will keep the people in mind, which was seen in Federalist 9 that they said that a government it is necessary for a government to keep the people in mind, and that's how a good government shall form.
And today, President Donald Trump is still upholding that view with his new latest executive orders, such as Executive Order 14149, where he's delaying the TikTok ban. This is essential to our U.S. economy and as a hub and communal space for us to express our First Amendment right of free speech. TikTok has provided over $24 billion to the U.S. GDP in 2023 and provides over 220,000 Americans with jobs. It also gave Trump a 36-point lead as a tool for his election campaign.
So the president is the only office that's elected by everyone. We have U.S. senators that are elected by their state constituents and representatives elected by those in their district, but we don't have anyone else besides the president that's elected by all of us. And so we all have an interest in the virtue, or lack thereof, in the executive. What actions could citizens take, ordinary citizens take, to help ensure a virtuous executive?
One action that we can take is being able to sue the executive branch. This can be seen recently with one of Trump's executive orders that already a case in Seattle, a judge shut down about an executive order on the 14th Amendment and birthright citizenship, and 22 states have also already filed for that as soon as that executive order was signed. So one way we can check the executive branch is by being able to sue them.
Another way we can ensure that we have a virtuous executive is to use our First Amendment right of freedom of speech. And with this, we can use various forms such as talking to others, social media, and to ensure and spread information about these executives.
And adding on with Daisy, expressing our problems and interests, we can start at the lower levels and bring issues up to the federal part, such as problems in Nevada, like we have Keep Tahoe Blue and Keep Truckee Meadows Beautiful. We have Reno Burrito, all focused on improving our state.
And adding on to what I was talking about earlier, it was seen in 2020 when Andrew Kuzmiko, that was the governor of New York, was removed from office because 3 women took to Facebook and Twitter talking about their sexual assault, which caused political pressure on him to resign from office.
Another one way we can see is from Article 1, Section 4, time, place, and manner. It's up to the people for who we want in our office. So by being able to vote, we can limit what president we want in office or who we don't want in.
Thank you. Some of what you talked about seemed, it's more of reactive, so what can we do on the back end? What do you think, what, if any, changes should we make to how we elect the president or elect the executive on the front end instead of retroactively addressing those issues?
One issue that we should bring up is changing the requirements for president. Since there's only 3 current requirements of being 35 years of age, being born in the United States, but also living in the United States for 14 years, there's no need for them to need a law degree or have military service since they are the commander-in-chief. So there should be an additional amendment to add requirements for presidents needing a law degree to understand the law, but also needing military experience.
Well, I like that idea. Or people going to law school, that's awesome. But don't you think then, just to follow up on that idea, don't you think then that will narrow the pool of, citizens who could, potentially become president one day?
It would narrow the pool of who can become president, but we live in a country that's free and fair. So by being born in the United States, you're already a natural citizen of the United States. So if you can be able to fund and go to law school and become in the military, it will help you extremely being able to lead the country that has a bunch of laws that are changing every day with executive orders and amendments, but then also being able to understand the military side of how to defend the country and how to use our forces.
You brought up in your testimony a potential amendment to ensure virtuousness or virtue in the executive, which was codifying the Youngstown case, right? And we recently saw an executive order issued by the President of the United States earlier this week that, in contravention of the 14th Amendment's citizenship clause, at least a federal judge has said so, and the Supreme Court case, Wong Kim Ark. The executive order is a federal order. So how does it relate to the Constitution? What takes supremacy? How do you analyze that? Is it the Constitution that's more, that has greater primacy, or is it an executive order that's issued by the president, or is it an act of Congress? How do you understand those different laws?
So starting from the Constitution, what I understand is that the 14th Amendment is that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction of are citizens. And with the Wong Kim Ark case, that person was born in the United States, but he was of Chinese descent and he went to China. But when he tried to return to the United States, he was prevented because of the Chinese Exclusion Act. But what's very specific about that is that he was a legal, natural-born citizen. There is no cases that have to do with illegal immigrants. The closest one was Plyler v. Doe, where the judge said that it doesn't matter if whatever jurisdiction they are under, if you're a legal or illegal child, you will go to school.
Thank you. Any questions? Following up a bit, if there are no questions on that, is what is really the authority to issue an executive order, and how would you analyze whether an executive order contravenes the Constitution or not? I mean, is there somewhere in the Constitution that tells you that an executive order is not as legally powerful as a statute or as a constitutional provision?
On the Constitution, there's actually no clause that dictates that presidents have the power to do an executive order. It's depicted from 2 clauses in Article 2, Section 1, that to full faith and credit of enacting as president in the executive branch. So there's no clause specifically saying that the president has the power to do an executive order. It was just interpreted that way of, if I want to be able to lead my executive branch, I need to be able to create executive orders. So there's no specific clause in there about executive orders.
I wanted to follow up on something you had mentioned in your opening statement about how the confer and confirm with the Senate of nominations for cabinet members. Are there any examples in the current nomination process, do you think, fits in with your characterization of this process as avoiding despotism?
Could you repeat the question?
Are there any modern day examples of where the Senate may have not confirmed somebody that they feared would be despotic by nature?
This can be seen with the recent confirmation of Pete Hegseth. It was a 50-50 vote in the Senate, which the Republicans had the majority in. So it was left up to the vice president to be able to confirm him. So that just shows that some Republicans don't trust some of the cabinet members that Trump is electing in there, and that can be seen with Pete Hegseth and that 50-50 vote toss-up with then Vice President Vance confirming him.
So we've talked a lot about villains, let's talk about fools. You spoke, Alex, about the different requirements needed to elect an executive. One of those components is age, and we talk about age on the front end, but when the framers were creating the Constitution, they weren't considering what happens to the mind on the back end because people didn't live that long. How do you think that could be applied in modern times, especially given that that's also a protected class?
I believe that there should be an amendment added that requires 2-year term limits for executive officials, especially because they become so distant from the people that they may no longer have the people's well-being in mind.
Another requirement we could add is having a cap on how old you can be, because since the average lifespan in America is about 77 years, we could probably put a cap at 70 years of you can't become president afterwards. So by being able to put a cap, we can make sure that we still have a mind that is somewhat adequate in office.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. Wow, we are on the edge of the Constitution, on the edge of, we just got a current event from yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll give some feedback now, but I'll start with the dean.
Okay, thanks. You guys did amazing. Really, I don't have too much to, give you feedback on how to improve because you truly were incredible. I'd say one of the really nitpicky things that, if you guys go on to national, you might want to think about, and this is a hard one, it's just the use of hands, right? When you're speaking, Daisy, you managed to keep, I don't know how, because I'm a hand speaker myself, I'll demonstrate now. But Daisy, you did a great job in keeping your hands, calm. Alex, you did great during the opening statement, and then it sort of fell apart, and Natalie needs a little more work on that. So that was really nitpicky, right? Because, judges are going to be focused on the substance, but you may get a judge or two who are going to think, when you're really close and tied with another team, right, they're going to think about, well, where can I, subtract some points, and that might be something where they think about that. But great eye contact with the judges throughout, and just a great job. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. You all did a great job of kind of thinking on your feet. We came from all directions, and you guys stayed calm and collected and provided us with evidence, and you very clearly know your stuff. I'm the only person on this panel who's not an attorney, so I don't think you should have to be a lawyer to be elected in the office. Maybe just participate in We the People. That would be a start. So good job, everybody.
Very good. Great job. That was really impressive. We asked some really hard questions, and questions we don't really know the answers to. I'll speak for myself. There are folks who are trying to analyze why an executive order, what constitutional source tells you that an executive order repugnant to the Constitution isn't valid. It doesn't exist. The supremacy clause isn't it. That's between federal laws and state laws. Or we're talking about the Constitution and executive order. It's a different analysis. And so that's a really hard question, and you handled it very well, and I really, really appreciated that. And I will tell you, look, having a lawyer, right, is in the Bill of Rights, and one of our privileges and immunities. I don't think lawyers are created by God. It's not a God-given right. But right, very important, and it's a really creative way to think about the executive. And we don't have to agree with you, right? We have to sort of kind of analyze your creativity creativity and your ingenuity, and you were really thinking on your feet today, and we really appreciate that, so very good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.